I'm Brandon Roberts. Welcome to the Pike County Report. Today I'm with Stephanie Richards, Executive Director of Artist Collaborative Theater, and she's also the Pike County Extension Agent for Fine Arts. Also with us, as always, is Judge Rutherford. Today we're going to talk about the Hatfield-McCoy production it's going to take place at McCarr. Stephanie, real quick, tell us a little bit about this.
It's a production about the Hatfield-McCoy story, and the way it started was we were at a Hatfield-McCoy County community forum, and while they were talking and discussing, and Judge Rutherford and Reed Potter, someone said we should have a production, and they said, well, we've got Artist Collaborative Theater here. Do you think it could be possible? And we said we certainly would love to, and it started from then. And we talked with Betty Howard, one of our local historians, and she and Hillman Dotson had meetings started over in that area, over at Phelps. We didn't want to do the Hatfield-McCoy play here for a couple of reasons. One is Pike County Extension Office. One of our big things is to serve the whole county. We've got ACT up and running, and it's doing well. So we need to move out into other parts of the county. So we wanted to go over in that part of the county where the actual feud sites took place. So we wanted to do the play over there. So McCarr already has an amphitheater at the Hatfield-McCoy Park. And we drove over there and saw it, and it was perfect. I couldn't believe it was there. It was like, ah! So we went over there and talked with Hillman and Betty Howard, and they brought Chris Coleman and Andrea Coleman in, and some other people, and we got a Hatfield-McCoy Arts Council started. And we decided we wanted an original script. We contacted a playwright I know from Barter Theater, and she couldn't do it, and she said better than the job she would do was Chelsea Marcantel would be awesome. So we worked with Chelsea. She came in once or twice and went over to feud sites, and she's young and energetic and has written a beautiful play. We're very excited about it, and not typically the way the story is told. It's different, but it's still true and accurate. One of our goals is to make sure that we're historically accurate.
Yeah. Judge, I know you went to Huntington for the pre-screening of the miniseries with Kevin Costner that renewed this whole interest in the feud, and you had mentioned when you returned about the historical accuracy of it, and I know this play was something you were real big on, it being historically accurate.
We realized when Pat and I went to Huntington with tourism and with Governor Patton and Judy, and we realized when we got to Huntington that about 80% of it was true and about 20% was for a television production, and that's what happened. So we certainly felt that when we left down there, that when this was on television, that it was going to certainly change what any concept anybody had about Hatfield-McCoy. Hatfield and McCoy has always been a feud that's talked about worldwide, and so what developed from that was the fact that we wanted to have a play, not exactly in Pikeville per se, where the McCoys left Blackberry and moved over to get away from the killing. They moved into Pikeville, buried over there. Randolph McCoy died there. He had a ferry across the mouth of Ferguson's Creek, and he operated till he died. Marie Justice passed away. She was 90-some years old. Told me when she was a little girl that her mother brought her down. There's no bridges in Pikeville, and she rode a ferry. Then when she could understand things, her mother explained to her that was Randolph McCoy that took us over on the ferry, and when she was a small girl, and then he died. He got in a fire over on Harold's Branch, not in the big house down there like we have read some places, but it's been authenticated that was over on Harold's Branch, where a family member lived and he passed away. But yes, we ended up at McCarr. The county became involved in it. We had spent a vast amount of money on a park over there, and had built a stage and an outside theater. They've been gospel sings there. They've been bluegrass music played at that, and we've just completed that last year. We was in the process of almost 80% of the park being completed, And we had money available for years that was designated to a railhead site for ATVs, horse riding, or whatever. We had run into a bottleneck because the guidelines would not let us place it because the N&W Railroad Company and the old bridge and the railroad right-of-way had restrictions in it, and it was for only walking. So there you was, across the road, AB tree. It was already designed by the engineers, already to be built. We realized that we could qualify across the road because we had a river trail approved by the state of Kentucky, already in place, already access to the river. So we called Frankfurt and said we want to spend this money for a trailhead. And it's not for ATVs because we got a bottleneck in it. So we'd got no way to get up the road from where it's supposed to be built, right across the road where the Auburn Tipperary used to be. So we moved on and got permission from them, and we have spent a vast amount of money that could be spent for nothing but that in the county, nothing else. It could be meant for. Money had been laying there for a few years. So then we was able to let a contract, get a builder, build public bathrooms, enlarge the stage, put a restroom in the stage. Then we just took action at Stephanie's request and Mrs. Stewart's request at the last court meeting to the sound and the lighting. So that's where we're at, and this thing is going to be great. Purpose of this program today is let people know about the location. It's over there where it actually happened. And why did the McCoys move to Pikeville? Because they could come across the river and kill them, you know, across the Tug River. So they decided they didn't want no more of the feud, and they moved to Pikeville.
Well, Judge, for anyone who may be curious, and Stephanie, let's take a look at a little bit of what they might be expect to see over there. If you,
we've got the first two actors that we're going to start with are Jason Justice playing Devil Anse Hatfield, and Brian Ratliff as Wall Hatfield, and they'll start our story for us.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is William Anderson Hatfield, but my friends call me Devil Anse, and I don't see any reason why you fine folk couldn't call me Devil Anse too. Now, I was born in 1839 in Logan County, Virginia. The second-born son of Big Ephraim and Nancy Vance Hatfield. I was one of 12 children raised right there in the Tug River Valley. When I grew up, I married Vicey Chaffins, a good mother and helpmate. And together, she and I raised 13 beautiful children who I'm proud to say stayed close to us our entire lives. But now the year that me and Vicey was married, well, I was mighty unsettling in that there neck of the woods. You see, the Civil War had broken out, and there was these roving bands of Union men who would come into our communities and do whatever they pleased. And there was no law. We had to take it upon ourselves to do what needed to be done. But you see, my pa and me and two of my brothers, Elias and Ellison, well, we had joined the Confederate Army. However, I did not hesitate to leave my post and return home to protect my kin. And folks, let me tell you, when I got there, I'm proud to say that I had my own army waiting on me. An army of friends and family, and they were strong and they were fierce, and we put the fear of the devil himself into those filthy Union dogs. Yeah, we killed those boys, we done it, but what they will have you believe is that we killed them in cold blood. That is not the case. We learned early on in the war to take care of our own affairs. Those boys killed one of ours. They killed my brother, a good Confederate man, a faithful servant of the Lord, and the law was going to do nothing about it. Let me ask you folks a question. What would have you done if it had been your brother who had been murdered? No hope of retribution from the law. No, we took care of our own. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, there was no way I was going to allow those boys to stand trial in Pikeville, Kentucky, the home of Yankee soldiers and their sons. But what my brother Wall could not see is that we could also not allow them to stand trial in Virginia. Why, what if old Preacher Ance went and pulled the same thing he did during the hog trial? Pulled himself up some kind of jury of 6 Hatfields and 6 McCoys to decide the fate of my brother's killers. Now, yes, I know what y'all thinking. We did have some McCoys on our side. But there were far too many Kentucky Hatfields who had served in the Union Army, many of whom were on the election grounds the day my brother Ellison was stabbed and shot. No, I did not know if we would get a fair trial at home. But what I did know is that I had to get those boys out of Kentucky and fast. So I quickly gathered my loyal supporters and my family, and we moved those McCoy boys into West Virginia. And just as I'd learned to do early on in the war, I placed lookouts real careful like all around. See, I wasn't worried about being in West Virginia. Why, if the West Virginia lawmen wanted to win their next set of elections, they'd need the votes I carried around with me in my pockets. No one challenged us. They knew my reputation from the war. Only 2 McCoys crossed the Tug River to beg for the lives of those boys. Tolbert's wife, Mary Butcher, and the boys' own mother, Sarah McCoy. Now, I must admit this did surprise me. It seemed that the McCoy men were too cowardly to come themselves, so they sent the women. But I promised those dear ladies that I would make sure that those boys got back into Kentucky alive. And as I stand here today before you fine folk and the Lord himself, I'm proud to say I kept my word to those women. Those boys did make it back to the Kentucky side of the Tug alive. At least for a little while. Because you see, I had a tough decision to make. Those boys had murdered my brother, and he was not going to get justice in either Kentucky or Virginia. And my loyal soldiers, they were looking to me for leadership. And I am a strong leader, and I can make the tough decisions. So I did what I knew needed to be done, and what we would have done in the war. I executed those McCoys for the murder of my brother Ellison Hatfield. Now, I was not surprised when we were indicted in Kentucky for murder. I also wasn't afraid. Who was going to arrest us? Wasn't a man alive could get to me. After this, things kind of settled down for a while. That is until my boy Johnsy went and married Nancy McCoy. Now, I knew there would be trouble because not only was Nancy a McCoy, she was from a strong Union family. Her father, Asa Harmon McCoy, a Union man. Her sister Mary was married to Bill Daniels, another Union man. And just as husband and wives are apt to do, why Nancy and Johnsy would lay in bed at night, talking. Johnsy would tell Nancy her moves. And the next day, whenever Nancy was out with Mary, hanging clothes or doing whatever it is women folk do, why, Nancy would tell Mary what Johnsy had told her the night before. Mary'd run home and tell Bill, who in turn would tell the McCoys. Now, it was a very confusing mess, but the end result is that you had the McCoys knowing our plans before we hardly even made them. Well, this did not sit well with my son Cap, who was quick to anger. He decided he was going to pay Mary a visit and rectify the situation. He found her at home alone with her mother-in-law, old Mrs. Daniels. And just as the good book says, spare the rod and spoil the child, he whipped those 2 women. Just a little bit. Just to show them you can't go around carrying tales on another man's family. And you know, when he was finished, I believe those women appreciated that valuable lesson. But as fate would have it, Jeff McCoy, Nancy's and Mary's brother, well, he had gotten himself into trouble. And he come to stay with Nancy and Johnsy while the heat died down. And when he got there and found those women in the states they were in, well, he became mighty upset. Said, I'm going to go get Cap. And he snuck away by cover of night, went to my son's house. Cap was not home. However, his wife was. She was home, alone, sick. This did not, however, keep Jeff McCoy from shooting that house up full of holes. And when Cap got back and found out what had happened, well, he flew angry and took after Jeff. And folks, let me tell you, when my son goes after someone, he gets them. More indictments from Kentucky. Yes, sir, those dollars were really starting to add up on our heads. Detectives and bounty hunters were crossing the Tug River trying to collect on us. I had to move us inland, build a fort, place guards day and night. We were forced to live like rats in a cage. I knew this had to end. I knew Randolph McCoy had to die. I decided that the best time to get at him would have been during his New Year's Eve party. However, after making all the plans, when it came time for the raid, I was laid up sick with the flu. But in my place, I sent Cap and my Uncle Jim Vance, both capable leaders. Unfortunately, the raid failed, and Cap had to be protected. Johnsy was now in trouble. It was a terrible mess. And Lord, how it made headlines all over the country. Of course, those articles were slanted against us. Suddenly, everybody opposed the Hatfields. The governor of West Virginia, close personal friend of mine, came to me and said, "Ants, his trouble's got to die down." You see, he was afraid that Frank Phillips would keep crossing the tug looking for us. Now, folks, let me tell you, I am a man who ain't afraid of nothing. But bad Frank Phillips, he ain't someone to trifle with. Besides, I was spending way too much money defending us and those on trial. So I did the most rational thing I could. I let the feud die down, and I retired to Island Creek. Why, in 1911, I was even baptized. And I'm proud to say that I did not lose one child to the feud. I myself was never arrested. I lived to be an old man surrounded by my loving family. Do you know how much they love me? Well, they loved me so much that when I died of pneumonia in 1921, they had an Italian marble statue of my likeness erected at the family cemetery at Saran, West Virginia. And you can still go there today and see me standing there in all my magnificence, with my heart pointed towards the West Virginia that I love so dearly, and my back to Kentucky.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Valentine Hatfield, but my friends and family all knew me as Uncle Wall. I'd like for you fine folks to do the same. Now, I was born in 1834 in Logan County, Virginia, which later became Logan County, West Virginia in 1863, as it was the only state born out of the Civil War. And when I grew up, I became a justice of the peace in Logan County and was the oldest brother of the leader of our family during the feud, Lance Hatfield. Now, there are several theories as to what started all the fighting between our two families, and that's why all of us have come here today, to tell you the history of the Hatfield and McCoy feud. Now, as most of you probably know, Civil War broke out during the lifetimes of many of us who actually fought in the feud. It was no secret that those of us Hatfields that lived in West Virginia were mostly Confederate supporters. And those McCoys over in Kentucky, well, they were all Union men. None so much so than Asa Harmon McCoy, who just so happened to be the brother of the leader of their family during the feud, Randall McCoy. When Asa got back from the war, ran into my Uncle Jim Vance, and folks, Uncle Jim was somebody who you didn't want to get on his bad side, especially when he had his guerrilla band of Confederate supporters, the Logan Wildcats, with him. But that's just what Asa did. Started running his mouth, and when things were said and done, Jim had heard enough. Threatened Asa with his life. Just like the Union hero that he was, ran home to his wife, said he thought things would blow over if he went and hid in the hills. The only thing for him was that when Uncle Jim makes a promise, he keeps it. Didn't take him long to find out where old Asa was hiding. Went with his Wildcats, and let's just say that Asa didn't live to tell the tale when they found him. That was the first bloodshed between our two families in the feud. But now, for years after that, our two families stayed away from each other. Us Hatfield stayed over in West Virginia, the McCoys stayed where they belonged over in Kentucky. That is until the hog trial of 1878, when Randall McCoy accused one of our cousins, Floyd Hatfield, of stealing one of his hogs. Now, to you folks, that may not sound like much, but to us, that's how you fed your families. You see, you let the hog fatten up in the summer, and in the fall you would slaughter it. That's how you put food on your plates in the winter. So being accused of stealing such a prized animal in our day was no small crime. Now, the trial took place over at Reverend Anderson Hatfield's house. Preacher Ants, as we called him. He came to me and said, "Wall, I got a problem. I don't know how to do the jury for this trial." So I said, "Why don't you make the jury up of 6 Hatfields and 6 McCoys? That way, if just one person thinks the other family's telling the truth, you'll get a verdict." And I am proud to say that is exactly what he did, and it worked too. You see, Bill Staten testified he personally saw Floyd Hatfield notch the ear of that hog. That was enough to convince Selkirk McCoy he was telling the truth. Floyd Hatfield won the trial 7 votes to 5. Now, tensions between the two families continued to rise, but peace did reign throughout the mountains, until 2 years later at the election grounds, once again by Preacher Ance's house, Devil Ance's son, Johnsy Hatfield, ran into Randall's daughter, Rosanna McCoy. Now, they're both here today, and they'll tell you their stories in just a little bit. Tensions between the families were at an all-time high, and then 2 more years later, at the election grounds once again, the feud finally ignited for good, when 3 of the McCoys attacked my little brother, Ellison Hatfield, out of cold blood. Stabbed him 27 times and shot him in the back, leaving him for dead. Now, I was over on Beach Creek when the attack happened. It was getting evening, and I thought it was best to lay low where I was at. Didn't know which one of my brothers had been attacked, and didn't know if any of his attackers were still out large. Next morning, I decided to go over to Blackberry where he'd been attacked. When I got to Preacher Hance's house, he had told me that my brother was Ellison that was the one that had been attacked and had to be taken over to Dr. Rutherford's to be cared for in West Virginia. I also found out where the 3 boys were that attacked my brother. 3 of our Hatfield cousins that were lawmen in Pike County held those boys and were going to take them into the Pikeville jail the next morning to await trial. Wasn't long after this, Devilance found out where those boys were being held. Took matters into his own hands. Rounded up every Confederate supporter he could find and marched those boys back into West Virginia where I was the law. We could do whatever we wanted to those boys. When I found out what Devilance had done, I decided to go to the schoolhouse where they were being held. When I got there, I was a little bit surprised to find Sarah McCoy was already there begging for the lives of her 3 boys. I had a talk with Devilance and convinced him to let her go talk to her boys, sit with them till dark. While she was in there, I decided to go tell her and the boys to remember that their Uncle Wall had been kind to them. When dark came, we sent her home. For 2 days, we awaited the fate of those boys, and on the 2nd day, we got our answer. You see, my little brother Ellison up and died. Left the family with a hard decision to make. See, some of us, like myself, thought the boys should stand trial for what they had done. And others, like my brother Devilance, thought those boys should be held accountable immediately for their actions. Devilance, being the one making all the decisions for the family at this point, decided to take those boys back into Kentucky. Except when they got there, they were in for a little bit of a surprise. They got to the banks of the Tug River, and all the men tied them up to the pawpaw trees that grew on the banks. Executed those boys for the murder of our brother Ellison Hatfield. Now, indictments came down from Kentucky. This didn't surprise me. 3 of their own were killed on Pike County soil. What did surprise me, however, that I was named amongst 20 men named in the indictments. I was over in West Virginia the day those boys were executed. Had nothing to do with their deaths and couldn't see how anybody else would think so either. Nonetheless, those indictments sat in the Pike County courthouse for years with nothing done about them. That is, until a man by the name of Bad Frank Phillips came along. Started leading raids into West Virginia going after the men named in the indictments. Didn't take him long to find his first target either, Selkirk McCoy. Now, I do know what you're probably thinking. Selkirk's and McCoy, why is he being arrested by Bad Frank? Well, Selkirk might have had the name McCoy. He was just as Hatfield as me or any of the others here come to talk to you today, even serving in the same unit of the Confederacy as my brother Devilance. The family decided to have a meeting, figure out how to get all this trouble to die down. Couldn't go into Kentucky anymore, and now we weren't even safe in West Virginia in our own homes. Decided the thing that needed to happen was Randolph McCoy had to die. Raid was planned on his house New Year's Eve of 1888. My Uncle Jim Vance, Devilance's son Cap, led the raid. However, something did go wrong. The only thing that came out of it was Calvin and Alifair were dead, and the cabin was burnt to the ground. More indictments came from Kentucky, except this time bounties were placed on our heads. $500 placed on the head of my brother Devilance. And I don't need to tell you that $500 in our day was quite a large sum of money. Didn't take long for the hills to fill up with bounty hunters, detectives, others trying to make a quick dollar for them and theirs. We were hunted men. Now, folks, I was a man of the law. Wasn't one known for fighting. So I decided to do the only thing I knew I could do. Turned myself in and awaited trial in Pikeville. While I awaited trial, Bad Frank kept leading more raids into West Virginia. Captured 8 more Hatfields by the time my trial started. 9 of us in total stood trial for our actions in the feud. Every one of us started turning in evidence against each other to clear our own names. The Whit boys testified in my trial that I had said I had made everybody sign a pledge the morning those boys were executed. That nobody would talk about the events that happened that day. That if they did, the punishment would be execution by hanging. Said I carried it around in my back pocket for the longest time till I found out about the crime of aiding and abetting. Then I destroyed the document by fire. Now, folks, I've already told you I was a justice of the peace. Don't think I'd have been too good at my job if I didn't know about the crime of aiding and abetting. But it didn't end there. Sarah McCoy testified I had said that if Randall McCoy or anybody else tried to save her 3 boys, they'd be shot full of more holes than a sifter bottom. The same woman that served me dinner when I awaited trial in Pikeville lied under oath just to see a Hatfield hang. Well, she might have gotten her way, but it wasn't me. Two people testified on my behalf, Bad Frank Phillips himself and the Pike County Attorney, James Sowards, both testifying that they didn't see me there the day those McCoys were taken into West Virginia or the morning of their executions. However, that still was not enough to convince a jury of my innocence. I was sentenced to life in prison. 8 of the 9 Hatfields that stood trial were sentenced to life in prison. Only Cotton Top wasn't so lucky. Sentenced to death by hanging in the streets of Pikeville for his confession of the murder of Alifair McCoy. But he's here today, and he'll tell you his story just a little bit later. Those 8 of us that had to serve life in prison were told to serve our sentences out in the city of Louisville. I'm sad to say that 6 months after my sentence began, it was served in full. So I died a lonely old man behind prison bars. But I'm back today. I'd like to thank you folks for taking interest in the feud and learning about what our two families did to each other. Thank you.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that. And Stephanie, with this whole feud and this play and being at the McCarr Park, you're sitting in Pike County, Kentucky, watching the play. Literally, out of your peripheral vision, you can see what we call Blackberry City, but the state of West Virginia is separated by the tug.
Yep.
Don't you think there's some ambiance added to this whole production and the fact that it's literally taking place on the grounds that these actual people once lived?
Schultze, the playwright, was insightful enough to start the play with a prologue with actors just in spots saying part of their lines just to get us started. And then the monologue starts, and it's Patty McCoy, and she tells them that road's not there anymore. You know, the only thing here is the river, the tug right here, and over there is West, and she orients everybody to where we are. And then in rehearsal, I just got chills. In rehearsal, when we've been going through the Paw Paw Boys shooting,
Sure.
and to know it's like eyesight just down the road, and knowing that all took when Aunt Sally, Sarah McCoy, is talking about where she buried her boys. You know, we know where that is, and
That's up the road.
it's all just amazing that it happened right there.
And Judge, you often talk about, you know, people working together and what it takes. This has been a major collaborative effort.
No doubt about it.
So many
And
people worked hard, not just
we've
you
had
and
so
Steph,
much interest. The Magistrate Hillman Dotson has certainly taken an interest in this, and what he's done, he's pushed and pushed and pushed.
He's been
on this.
amazing.
He has. He's been amazing. We was over recently for a visit and getting an update on the project. We discussed with him the parking lot. We're working with the coal corporation to get that property all the way up from the parking area that we was going to get. We were asking for it on up to where the bridge and the railroad comes across, so that in the future a campground can go there. But adequate parking will be there. We've talked to the state about their message signs for safety reasons to be over there when this production starts. And it's a perfect, to me, that you couldn't have a better location anywhere to have this, and that's exactly where it ought to be. And what this lady done, a lady from Chicago, moves to Abington, and then takes an interest and has the ability. I took it home with me, Brendan, and I read the script, Blood Song, and it is absolutely amazing. And I'll give Betty Hard, our expert, and wish her well. I know she's had some health problems the last few days, and want everybody to keep Betty in her prayers, because she has to have some further, maybe surgery or something. But what Betty did to help her, and to make sure that this was correctly and was correct and factual as the best it could be. And I know Betty concurs, and I'm sure that Jimmy Wofford, and we wish Jimmy the best. Jimmy's, I know, had 2 hip replacements and hadn't been active at all, but what Jimmy Wofford has meant to this Hatfield and McCoy over the years has been promoted. But what's been put together by Artist Collaborative Theater is absolutely unbelievable. And I think the people, as you watch this today, and as you've seen what you see today on this, of the monologue, everybody's going to come out. And I think they will come in from Virginia. We've had calls from Virginia. We have know that the West Virginia people is going to come across the river. And I think it's going to be a great production. And we're just glad the county could join the Extension Board and all the Pike Arts and all of them to make this a reality. And if you don't have vision and you don't have the initiative to get something done, and if you don't work together, nothing will happen. When you do that, good things happen, as you like to say. Good things happen. And this is a good thing that's happened. Yeah. And everybody together has caused this to happen. The Lord has blessed us. He made the money available for the development of the property over there that we didn't think we had. Right. And it just showed up, and Frankfurt agreed the money could be expended for that. Was able to complete it. We will have a fine bathroom for the public. We'll have parking across. Where it looks like the coal company has agreed that they're going to give us a deed for the property. We asked for either a deed, a lease, or to donate the property to the county. And they have been discussing with the county attorney and Judge Hayes about just deeding us the property where the old Auburn Temple used to sit, across the road, where we will park and then plan a campground. We have other plans over there that we've discussed too that be there. But today, the purpose of here is this Hatfield McCoy drama, I called it, outdoor drama, at the McCarr, Kentucky, right on Blackberry, where it happened. Isn't that great?
It's like a tourism mecca.
It is.
It really is.
And while we're mentioning that, let's go ahead and watch a couple more monologues.
All right. We're going to see Jordan Mullins as Jauncey Hatfield and Emily Cheney as Rosanna McCoy.
I'm Jauncey Hatfield, fun-loving son of Devil Ants and Vicey Chaffins Hatfield. I'm the oldest son, and I was named after Johnson McCoy, who was married to my ma's sister. My pa and Johnson McCoy were in the same group during the Civil War. Later, Pa and Johnson fell out, and Pa thought Johnson wanted to kill him. I always wondered if Pa regretted me ever being named after that McCoy. Yes, I like to have fun, and I like to make, sell, and drink moonshine. I like the girls, and the girls like me. I never took things too seriously. Pa always squirreled at me. Said he wanted me to be more like my brother, Cap. Cap was named after my pa. His name was William Anderson Hatfield. Pa claimed to be a captain of a group that he formed to fight Yankees and whoever else he wanted to fight. So, of course, the son named after him became Cap for the Cap that Pa claimed to be. Our kin crossed the token to go to the election in Kentucky in 1880. We always went to Kentucky election. Pa wanted to control the election. When they called for everyone to go to a certain side for a certain candidate, he wanted to make sure there were enough of us there to control which side the folks went to. Now, that was what Pa wanted out of a Kentucky election. I wanted to drink and socialize. Then, I saw the prettiest girl I believe I ever laid eyes on. I asked who she was, and it didn't discourage me one bit that it was Rosanna McCoy, the daughter of Randall McCoy. Others told me to stay away from her. She was being told about me, too. We went off the election ground to a place away from everybody else. We talked and talked, and I really liked her. She was so gentle. Soon we realized everybody was left, and it was about dark. Rosanna was afraid. Her pa was mighty strict on her daughters, and her ma always kept her daughters close to home. So I decided to take her home with me. Ma and Pa always had a group of folks around. Pa had his guys over, and Cap had his friends too. Surely one more little gal couldn't make a difference. When we got home, Ma knew it was trouble, but Pa was happy. He never intended for me and Rosanna to be married or to her to be together. He wasn't worried about our happiness or Rosanna's reputation. He thought he was getting one over old Randolph. Later, he would say he'd been wrong, that he made a mistake. He should have let us marry. Her sisters came from her mom and begged her to go home. Rosanna was afraid. She was afraid to go. I was always away with other gals and drinking. Rosanna wanted to move someplace far away. I could never make the decision. So Rosanna made the decision. She left me. She went with her Aunt Betty to Stringtown. After Rosanna, I married 5 more times. I worked as a security guard, but I was no gunman. I lived with my 16-year-old son, Robert Luther, when I died, alone, at home. Mom was still living. She buried me next to my pa, put a very large mark on my grave. I had no wife buried next to me. Rosanna rests in Pikeville. She had no husband buried next to her either. Rosanna died when our baby died. She died in 1889. I lived 32 years after she died. How ironic that both of us rest next to our parents. Rosanna looks to West Virginia looking for me, and I look to West Virginia searching for her. Perhaps our spirits can finally enjoy the peace that is between our 2 families. Peace at last between the Hatfields and the McCoys.
My name is Rosanna McCoy, and I first met John C. Hatfield when I attended the election at the home of Jerry Hatfield in 1880. I've been carefully sheltered my 20 years of life. Seldom have I attended any social functions. I arrived at the election on a bay mare with my brother Talbert. Johnsy noticed me immediately. Never had I experienced such a sweet talking charmer like Johnsy. He took my hand and told me his name, and with his hand he took my heart. I loved him at first sight. We talked, and soon it was dark, and I was afraid to go home. So Johnsy took me home with him. Now Johnsy's mother Vicey knew there would be trouble. She pleaded with Devil Lance to allow us to marry. Johnsy pleaded with him. But his answer was always the same, firm no. Devil Lance said he knew I was a good girl, but he disliked my dad Randall. Said he thought he would be best in Randall. Several times my dad sent for me to come home, but I was afraid to go. And I really didn't want to leave Johnsy. As time passed, Johnsy went back to his old ways. His mother thought that his love for me would change him, but it did not. He started drinking heavily. He always liked liquor and women. Started seeing 2 of my cousins, Mary Stafford and Nancy McCoy. The pain this brought me was unbearable. So even though my heart was in West Virginia, I went back to the home of my parents. Mother was kind and tried to reason with Pa, but he was so ashamed of me. Life was miserable at home. So I left my parents' home at Blackberry and I went to live with my Aunt Betty, a wonderful lady. When Johnsy found out about me staying at Aunt Betty's, he did a very daring thing he did. He crossed the tug to see me. We talked in the yard and I told him of our baby. He promised to return the next week so we could plan our life together. Perhaps we could elope. But what I didn't know at the time was that 2 of my younger brothers had saw Johnsy and they'd told Pa, and they set out to look out for him. And when Johnsy returned the next week, he was arrested by my brother Jim, a deputy sheriff. There were many outstanding warrants for Johnsy in Pike County, Kentucky. The posse to take my Johnsy away included 9 men. 3 of them were my brothers, Jim, Talbert, and Farmer. I pleaded with them, begging them not to take him away. They turned on me in anger and they rode off into Pikeville. I knew I had to save Johnsy. I knew I had to get to Elias Hatfield's cabin. So I grabbed a horse with no saddle or bridle. Frantically, I tore my petticoat to make a bridle for the horse. And I rode hard. I rode through rough mountain terrain, through thick brush, through rushing rivers, and over slippery logs. My horse stumbled and fell, but I continued on until I reached Elias Hatfield's cabin. When I got there, I was bruised and bleeding. I took quick, short breaths, and I told them my story. A group of 20 men, with Devil Anse as their leader, set out to save my Johnsy. And I returned home to Aunt Betty, not knowing if Johnsy was okay or if any of my brothers had been killed or hurt. Aunt Betty and I worried together. Had any McCoys been hurt? So on the second day, I took a second horse ride to the home of my parents just to see if my brothers were okay. They were furious with me. I had endangered the lives of my family. I was an outcast among the McCoys. And I returned to Aunt Betty, and I lived a very lonely life. Until my beautiful baby daughter was born. I hovered over that wonderful baby with great joy, and Aunt Betty was so good to us. But my happiness was short-lived. An epidemic of measles broke out in Stringtown. My baby caught the measles and then pneumonia and died within a week. I wouldn't leave her grave. I couldn't leave her grave, not even for Ma. And then Ma needed me. My sister Alifair took on typhoid fever, a mean disease that lasts for months. So I kindly said goodbye to Aunt Betty and made a sad visit to the grave of my baby, and I went home. When I got there, I nursed Alifair back to health. I longed to go back to Aunt Betty and to the grave of my baby. But then a plea came out from a close friend and relative, Martha Atkins Klein, the wife of Perry A. Klein. Martha Klein had took on typhoid fever, plus her and Perry had 6 children. So instead of going to Aunt Betty, I went where I was needed and well treated. Once again, Johnsy came to see me. He pleaded with me, begging me to marry him. But I could see no way. We had caused so much grief to our families. So even though I loved Johnsy, I sent him away. Once again, he consoled himself with liquor and women. I grieved and prayed for divine help. And then life had one more purpose for me, one more chance to help my family, one more chance to redeem myself. When they burned my mom and pa out of their home at Blackberry, my mom was more dead than alive. She was brought to me to the home of Perry Klein where I was staying. She had lost 6 children. We grieved together, and I tried to keep her hopes for life alive. But as she grew stronger, I grew weaker. I lost my will to live. People started blaming me for the death of my brothers and Alifair, the same Alifair I had nursed back to health. My death was carried in all the papers. Even Johnsy was hurt. Devil Anse and not letting Johnsy marry me was the worst mistake he ever made. My pa just hated the Hatfields even more, blaming them for my death. He never understood that Johnsy loved me. He never understood that I loved only one man, Johnsy Hatfield, deeply and forever. I didn't get to rest my brothers and sister at Blackberry, but I rested Stringtown with my baby, at peace.
Welcome back. We're back with Stephanie Richards, Judge Rutherford, and Stephanie and Judge even. I know Judge loves coming up here to the Artists Collaborative Theater. I've been up, not with him, but I've been up here while he was here.
We put him on stage.
And I know he was, I believe you
died
died
right
in
over
there.
there.
You
Died.
died on this stage, but
Tried
the,
to get me to fall on the floor, and I'd get ready to have a knee operation, and they graciously let me die on the table.
Well, speaking of that, you know, we showed up. You come up here. There's always people running around in costume and talking to themselves, and you know, with their lines and stuff. Stephanie, talk a little bit about the dedication, the preparation that these actors go through. These volunteer actors, by the way,
Yeah.
that go through to put on something like this, or any of them.
We are an all-volunteer theater. We have now been in existence for 11 years, and that's hard to believe. I was driving to the theater this morning, and I thought, there's no way that 11 years ago
Time
I thought that
flies.
this would happen. We have our own building by the grace of God and by the help of Pike County Fiscal Court, Judge Rutherford, and our Pike County legislators, Representative W. Keith Hall, Leslie Combs, and Senator Ray Jones. They went out on a limb to believe in community arts and what it can do for a community. And then University of Kentucky came along.
First arts program, Pike County, Kentucky.
And that was when I realized if I'll just stay out of the way, God's hand is so deep in this that I just can't screw it up. Just don't screw it up, and you'll be okay. So I got hired as the University of Kentucky Pike County Extension Agent for Fine Arts, so that financial drain didn't have to go on the theater, and I could work with the whole county through the schools and as much as possible. And one of the choices was we could do everything sort of well, or we could do each program really well and move on as we go, and that's what we've chosen to do. Artist Collaborative Theater has over 150 volunteers now. We just did the numbers for the end of the fiscal year reports for extension. Over 8,000 volunteer hours were logged in just at ACT this last season. In addition to that, if you transfer those hours into dollar amounts of what it saved the county, it was over $6 million.
Amazing.
Plus the money that we put back into the community in real dollars, in real tangible. Rehearsals take 4 weeks, take about 4 weeks, 4 hours a night, 5 to 6 nights a week. So that's the dedication that we have. And we are very proud that we are local based, and all of our people on stage are from our local area. They have other jobs and they do other things during the day, and then they come here to express their artistic talent.
You know, Pat and I was elated to go to Pittsburgh and receive a national award for this theater, and was able to come back here and make the presentation to you. You couldn't go because of some problems that you had confronted that time. And we was happy to make that trip up there, and was proud of this theater and what they got the award for. And you can tell them a little bit about that.
We are the most award-winning theater in the state of Kentucky, and we're very proud of that. Judge Rutherford's office recommended one of our programs for the NACO.
Oh, you and Brandon put it together to submit it.
Yay. So we put it together. Brandon put it together. I gave him the ideas. That's how it happened. And our Girls in Technology program. So we have a program, and we really didn't know, we didn't start it as a program. We looked around and said, we've got a program. Because our young ladies had fallen into our technical theater work very naturally. And they can sit up in the booth and run sound and run lights. We have males also. We have young men students, but our young women are just embracing this idea of technology, and technology is a field that women aren't encouraged to go into. And so we have some young women that are amazing on the soundboard and light board.
Didn't you have one girl go on to college to do this?
She starts University of Kentucky in August, Allie Sesko, and she is going to be majoring in sound engineering and design.
See, there's a success story right there. I think that's pretty neat, because I remember you telling me she started out in that doing the Girls in Technology program here, and just excelled.
And she was so I don't want to say shy, but she would not step out into the foreground, into the forefront. And now she was the lead in Footloose. She was Ariel in Footloose.
Well, see, this Hatfield McCoy play, the Facebook page is very active.
Yes.
You know, they're on there, they're talking back and forth, they're doing this, they're doing that. It's been a pretty rigorous preparation process as well, hasn't it?
It has been, because we're not just doing a play; we're putting the support in underneath it. You know, so like Judge Rutherford said, the dressing rooms were added, the bathroom. So it's a lot of that infrastructure that's going on in addition.
Well, and you have your regular
and we're doing our regular
productions
shows.
here at ACT. So.
We close Red Velvet Cake War on Sunday and open Hatfield and McCoy that week.
Right.
Well.
Bless our hearts. We don't know any better.
Unbelievable.
I do want to say this past year, so I've been absent some for some personal reasons, and the thing that I'm most proud of, and it's what Extension is all about, is training leaders to step up and take care of things.
Yes.
They ran this theater with the guidance and the leadership of Lauren Stewart, our new artistic director.
Great.
She's
Highly
amazing.
impressed by Mrs. Stewart. I'm on the Extension board.
Yeah.
And I look at that as a very important duty that I have, and I don't miss a meeting if Jeannie can get me there.
And she does get you there. She does. But Lauren Stewart has been an asset to the theater, and she's doing a beautiful job, and she takes care of everything and everyone. And we've just flourished under their leadership. And under my absence, we didn't miss a beat. We actually grew.
Well, have we watched Lauren's monologue yet?
Not yet.
Well, let's watch hers and the other one.
All right. We've got Zachary Cheney as Randall Bud McCoy, Jr., and we have Lauren Stewart as Nancy McCoy, and we have Trayton Blackburn as Cotton Top.
My name is Randall Jr., but my mom always called me Bud. I'm the son of Sarah and Randall McCoy, and I'm 17 years old. I was sitting on a walk log to the schoolhouse all day when I heard the shouts and shooting. I rushed to the election ground. Toller was being arrested, and Farmer walked to his side and surrendered. Then they grabbed me. I told them that I hadn't done anything. Then they asked who had got Toller off of Ellison. They said it was me. I was arrested by the Pike County lawman and was supposed to be taken to the Pike County jail. It was late in the day, and everyone knew that it would be a hard time over the mountain terrain to Pikeville. So it was decided that we would be kept overnight. Ma and Mary stayed close by. The next day we started to Pikeville. We hadn't been on the road an hour when Devil Lance and a gang of 40 Hatfieldmen rode up to us. The Pike County lawman gave us to the Devil Lance gang. We were taken from Kentucky lawmen into West Virginia. That night it was raining and it was dark, and we saw two Indians coming through the darkness. It was Ma and Mary. Ma was pleading for her release to be taken back to Kentucky. She was even down on her knees praying for us to be taken back to Kentucky. Devil Lance gave her the same answer as he gave everybody, a firm no. Ma went away. The next day, Ma came back. She was still pleading with Devil Lance, but his answer was still the same, a firm no. The next day, Ma came back a third time. She said she was still pleading, down on her knees, begging for us to be taken back to Kentucky. The Hatfields even sang hymns to humiliate Ma. They sang, "Near my God to thee." Devil Lance made her a promise. He said, "Oh, I'll bring him back to Kentucky alive, no matter what. If he gets well or if he dies, oh, I'll bring him back to Kentucky alive." So that night, Ellison had died of his wounds. As they moved us across the tug, I looked at the hills of Kentucky that I loved so much. I thought, why had Pa not come? Why had he not come to save us? They tied us to the pawpaw trees. I was asked if I wanted my eyes covered. I said no. I would look into the face and the eyes of the coward who shot me. They started shooting. I fainted. When I came to, I was alone with the bullet-ridden bodies of my brothers. I looked up and I saw Alex Messer. He was riding toward me. He fired one shot toward my head. It hit me.
My name is Nancy McCoy, and I'm the youngest child of Patty Klein McCoy. My father, Asa Harmon, was murdered just a few months before I was born. And my sister Mary married before I was even 2 years old. So I grew up with 4 brothers. Now, being the youngest out of this lot, I was spoiled, high-spirited, and spunky. I wasn't even 15 years old when I met Chauncey Hatfield. You see, he saw me walking home from school, and in those days I had to walk almost 2 miles, so he offered me a ride on his horse. And like my cousin Rosanna, I fell for Chauncey Hatfield. So we got married and we moved into West Virginia, and there hadn't been any real trouble between my family and the Hatfields till I moved in with Chauncey. You see, I heard about Ellison Hatfield being killed, and I also heard about my 3 cousins being tied to those pawpaw trees and shot. I knew trouble was brewing. And Chauncey, he was so weak in character. Spent all of his time with his daddy, Devil Lance, and his brother Cap, and I knew they was up to no good. So I begged him just to take our family and leave, but he never would. So I stayed there in West Virginia, dissatisfied with Chauncey and hating his brother Cap, who, for the record, was afraid of me. But after the New Year's Day massacre, life became unbearable for me in West Virginia. Too much had happened to my family. My sister Mary had been beaten, and my brother Jeff was dead. And I had lost 6 of my first cousins. Now, don't get me wrong, I was happy to see them Hatfields rotting in the Pike County jail. but I ridiculed Chauncey. I told him that it took 23 Hatfield cowards just to shoot 3 tied-up McCoys, and 12 of them just to beat Mary and old Mrs. Daniels. And it took 9 Hatfields just to burn out Uncle Randall and kill him and Sarah's children, Calvin and Alifair. And those men who left my Aunt Sarah for dead, they was cowards. I told him I wanted a hero like Frank Phillips. So he dared me to leave. And I did. I took my 2 babies, Stella and Nancy, and I crossed that tug into Kentucky. Went back to live at my mama's house, Patty Klein. Now my brothers, Bud and Lark, they was living close by, and we talked about that man who had helped them bring the Hatfields to justice. And they thought that I should get to meet my hero. You see, they thought I needed a protector, thought the Hatfields might come for my children. And we all knew what them Hatfields did to women. So I met Frank Phillips and decided he was the man for me. And this time my mama actually agreed with me. So we were married, and we were both from such strong Union families that it seemed that our marriage had to be blessed by President Abraham Lincoln himself. Now there was more action to come from the McCoys, but this time I could be proud of what side I was on. Proud of my brothers and proud of my husband. But unfortunately, my husband died, and I was left a very young, very wealthy widow. He provided very well for all of our children in his will, all 4 of my Phillips children, and even Chauncey's 2 Hatfield children. But the thing I needed most was what money just couldn't buy. I needed my health. I died just 3 years after Frank in 1901, when I was 35 years old. But now we rest together in the small Phillips Cemetery at Peter Creek at Jamboree.
Hi, my name's Cotton Top. Some people knew me as Hatfield, and some people knew me as Mounts. My ma was Harriet Hatfield, my dad was Ellison Hatfield. They's the parents of me and my brother, George. They never did get married, though. Later, Ma married David Mounts, and I lived with her when I was little, so everybody knew me as Cotton Top Mounts. As I grew older, I wanted to spend some more time with my Hatfield relatives. You see, my pa, he got married, and he had a whole bunch of boys. They's my brothers, and I knew them. I didn't live with them, though. And my Uncle Devil Ants, he had a whole bunch of boys who were always high-spirited and having fun, and they let me go with them. They was always having so much fun. They seemed to laugh a lot when I was around. I laughed a lot too. I always wanted to do what the rest of the boys were doing. So when Uncle Ants and the cousins went to round up them McCoy boys that killed my pa, I was part of the group that rounded them up, and I was part of the group that killed them McCoy boys. Now Uncle Ants knew we was in a little bit of trouble because we all had warrants out for our arrest. But I didn't worry, though, because Uncle Lance said nobody can arrest a Hatfield, and I was a Hatfield. A lot of my cousins had girlfriends and got married, so I wanted to get me a girlfriend and get married. My girlfriend was Rebecca Justice. She was 36, and I was 18 when we got married. We got married over in Logan County on Christmas Day, 1882, just a few months after them McCoy boys killed my pa. When Chauncey came looking for me, I was at home. He said he wanted me to do something. Now, when I heard this, I really didn't want to go. But Cap was my very best friend, and I really didn't want to let him down. So I went on to Uncle Lance's house. Uncle Lance was sending us on a job. He sent Uncle Jim Bance as the leader, and he sent 3 of his boys, Cap and Chauncey and Robert Lee. And he sent 2 of us cousins, me and my half-brother, Indian Elliott. French Ellis went, and he was a cousin. Well, he married a niece of Devil Ants. Only one of us that wasn't related was Charlie Gillespie, but his mama was a close friend of Devil Ants, and he's a young friend of Cap's. New Year's Eve, 1887, found our Hatfield riders surrounding that McCoy cabin. Things quickly got out of hand. we got kind of carried away with not letting nobody escape the cabin. We shot at them and they shot back at us. We set the house on fire and we shot the people who came out. We killed the boy, Calvin, and the girl, Alifair. And we beat Aunt Sarah Lee. We beat her real bad. I knew he was in trouble. But I wasn't worried because I knew Devil Lance wouldn't let him take us to jail. I wasn't even worried when the detectives came down from Pikeville to try to take me to jail. But I was taken to jail. That's okay though, because Cap promised me that if I confessed to killing Alifair, he'd give me a saddle and a rifle and $500. So I did. I confessed to everything. I had a court-appointed lawyer. His name was Mr. Conley. Now, Mr. Conley was awful worried, and he told me not to confess, but I didn't listen to him. On the day of my trial, witness after witness came up and testified. Some of them said that I killed Alifair, and others, well, others say that they heard her saying Cap's name, and that he's the one who shot her. I didn't defend myself. I was waiting for Cap to come and rescue me. They found me guilty and sentenced me to death by hanging. Mr. Conley was awful worried. He tried to appeal my case to the next court level. They said my confession would stand. No one came to help me. I told the reporters I didn't blame the McCoys. It was the Hatfields that brought me to this. They came for me with guns to murder the man who killed my pa. I was there. But so was Alex Messer and Walt Hatfield. And they didn't have to die for what they did. The Whit boys turned state evidence, and they got away with everything. Cap killed Alifair, and he wasn't even caught. On the day I was to die, only one person came to Pikeville to try to save me, and it was Frank Phillips. He told Sheriff Maynard that I didn't deserve to die and that he was determined to stop the hanging. Sheriff Maynard said the law said I had to die. Mr. Phillips was very drunk. To stop him, Sheriff Maynard had to throw him in jail. It was then I realized that I was going to die alone, and that I would die with not one friend in the whole world and not one friendly face around me. On the day I was to die, thousands came to Pikeville for my hanging. They even sat up in the hills to look at the scaffolding. As they led me to the scaffolding, I looked over the crowd for Cap. He said he'd come. Well, where was he? Why didn't he come? As they led me to the noose, I told them the Hatfields made me do it. They put the noose around my neck, and they put a black mask over my face. And I heard the trap door spring open.
All right, welcome back to the Pike County Report. I'm here with Stephanie Richards and Judge Rutherford. And Stephanie, we were just talking before we started filming about the fact that some of the people, you had said earlier about everyone being from the area.
Yes.
Talk about how the impact of some of these actors actually could have been related or be related to the people they're portraying. It kind of goes along with that whole ambiance thing about being over there on the banks of the Tug Fork while doing it. These people may be the bloodline of Randall McCoy.
Well, we know Betty Howard can tell us.
Well, certainly.
And she will.
And she will. those two things, so that any of the actors or tech people or volunteers doing concessions could be a direct descendant of the Hatfields and McCoys. That's pretty amazing, and that we have a historian genealogist that can actually track it. I've actually not asked Betty about my genealogy because I've never had the time to listen to the whole story. So when I have a vacation, I'm going to ask her. But in addition to that, the other beautiful thing, I think, is that we have local people portraying local characters. And there's something about Eastern Kentucky people that people away from here can't quite tap into. We have a different rhythm in how we speak, not just our dialect, but a different cadence in how we speak. We have a different understanding of why we do things. So to this day, I mean, we've had the joke around here that people outside think we're savages, like if we kill, and the Hatfields and McCoy were savages. And I said, back then, today, we'll still kill over family and land.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
And there's just something about us that understands that and how important family is. We've done some work in the play and followed it through. It's interesting that Devil Ants actually doesn't engage for 4 events. So there's a killing. Ace Harmon gets killed. There's the pig trial, something else, and then when his brother Ellison gets killed, that's when he says that's enough. And people don't see that, right? But it takes a local person to dive in and see that. And our actors really are doing a beautiful job balancing the story, so one side of the story is not more heavy than the other, and making them human, so they're not just flat characters.
Well, that was something Judge talked about when he first went to the private screening of the movie, about how Costner was obviously the lead actor.
Yes.
So the movie was kind of slanted toward the Hatfields, and all, and then he was also talking about how, like you just said, balancing this one out. I remember you saying that, Judge.
You got to remember that there was a lot of Hatfields lived on Blackberry.
Still
I
is.
started going to Blackberry in the '60s. And you would talk to a Hatfield and say, "Are you Devil Ants' relation?" And here's what they would say: "No, we're Creek Hatfields. We're not River Hatfields," which means they didn't live in West Virginia, come over and kill their.
That's
they
funny.
was married within their families back then.
Right.
And then you can, as you go through this, you'll understand the trial of the Hatfield judge, and then you had your 6 McCoys and your 6 Hatfields, and you had, if you remember, one McCoy married into the Hatfield,
Right.
who was the boat that on
Swung
the
it the
hog
wrong
kill-
way.
that the wrong way, and didn't help.
Yeah.
Also, it'll bring out, if you see pictures of the Hatfield, if you will see any picture, you'll see even the small children with a gun. Look at your McCoy pictures. You'll never see a gun in a photograph that exists in a McCoy's hand in a picture. And they're existing, but you never see the gun. So it was different mentality that they had back then.
Right.
That and the good or the bad, it happened here. And it showed our history. We all came from England, Wales, or Scotland, and we were all married, you're all kin in this area. And so it's going to be great. It's going to be the most realistic and factual that anything has been. There's been a lot of movies put on. There haven't been any with big productions like it was with the Kevin Costners and those, but there've been a lot. But this here is the closest. What this lady from Chicago that moved down here to Abington, Virginia, and then come and have Betty hired, a local genealogist and expert on not only this, but the Revolutionary War, Civil War, and on and on and on. We're just blessed to have Betty hired among us, and her knowledge that she has. And she has good helpmates.
She's
her
amazing.
husband really has got involved since his retirement.
Yeah.
Well, Judge, while we're bragging on people, and Stephanie, you probably speak to this as well as anyone, Chris Coleman.
Man.
This whole Hatfield McCoy Arts Council, which, by the way, HatfieldMcCoyArts.com, and you can also get them on Facebook.com/. HM Arts Council. But Chris Coleman, like you and I were talking off camera, the 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the day, the guy's posting stuff about this play, about the Hatfield McCoys in general.
Yes.
He deserves, I think he's
He's our leader. He's our fearless leader on the Hatfield and McCoy Arts Council. There are a few people who, because there was an interest in the Hatfield and McCoy feuds when I first moved back here in the early 2000s, and then it sort of took a dip.
Yeah.
There are a few people who kept that ball spinning or those plates spinning while the rest of us caught back up after the miniseries. And Chris Coleman and his wife Andrea are two of those people, young people, which we're very excited about having young people lead that way and have that much of an interest in history, and they do a beautiful job.
In 1976, at that time it bubbled up again back in
Right.
76, and the county government and the Pike County Heritage Commission, which we just put back in force, the State Heritage Commission, they come and did a study. The lady came up here, Mrs. Mills, I remember, moved up here, stayed about 7 weeks. Some people on the board took her in, took her home with them. Didn't have to have a hotel or motel, and she got every site, even, and we had an architect then, Harold Stratton Moore, who was a local architect, very much interested in it. He said, well, I'll do this for nothing. And we got that put on I'm not saying we, I'm talking about Pike County government with the County Heritage Commission, the State Heritage Commission, got this book in the U.S. Commerce Department, a heritage designation from Washington, D.C. And it was all listed. The inner core of the 1883 courthouse was constructed. That core is still in place. Today, the same courtroom we have the physical court meeting is the actual courtroom that Cotton Top was tried in, and everybody else, Cotton Top Mounts, and all of them was tried in that era. And that was because of the State Heritage Commission. And I called down, and of course Mrs. Mills had passed on, but this is going to be great, and and we certainly you will see the dates and the times and the opening of this. And
well, Judge, we'll be there when it has its premiere on the 26th at 7:30. I'll be in a dual capacity somehow. I don't know how I'm going to pull that off.
Brandon's one of our actors in the play.
Yeah, but
He plays Bad Frank Phillips.
but you'll have it's 7:30 showtimes on July 26th, 27th, August 2nd and 3rd, August 23rd, 24th. We'll put this on the screen too, so everybody can see it. August 30th and 31st. You got 3 p.m. showtimes, July 28th, August 4th, August 25th, September 1st and 2nd. And all this information is available, and more information is available at www.hatfieldmccoyarts.com.
easy to find, 119 to Southside School, 399 to Hardy, across the hill, and turn left, and you'll come to the park.
All right, on behalf of Stephanie and Judge Rutherford, thank you all today, and I'm Brandon Roberts. Thanks for watching the Pike County Report.